welcome to Quick Trivia with Mike. I'm your host, Mike Brever. Quick Trivia with Mike is the weekly quiz show right here at ECTV, where we challenge you to come up with the answers to 3 trivia questions that I pose on an ongoing basis. It's only seen right here on channel 955 at East Castle Place. We hope you're having a really good time with it. You all know the format. I ask you 3 questions. You get the answers to me by noon on Monday, and there's any one of a number of ways you can do so. You can email me at mbrever@eastcastleplace.com, or you can call me at 963-8425, or you can put your answers in my mailbox behind the concierge desk. I'll get them any one of those 3 ways. I know I gave you that phone number awful fast, and I gave you my email address awful fast. Just call the front desk and they'll give it to you. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what happens if multiple people get all 3 questions right, or only 2 questions right. Well, we do have a tiebreaker. I hope you were paying attention to the music that we opened the show with. That is the tiebreaker. You'll hear it again at the end of the show. So if you know what the piece is that we're playing, that's the tiebreaker. If we still have a tie after that, as you're going to see happen this week, we have a random drawing of the people that had the same number of questions right and guessed what we call our bumper music. And the random drawing determines who gets our big prize, which this week is a bottle of wine. However, before we can give you the new questions, we need to give you the answers to last week's questions. So let's get right into it, shall we? Once again, we had 3 questions, and we asked you to identify the bumper music. First question we had pertained to some presidential trivia. You all know that Donald Trump is president number 45. President of the United States is the most powerful person in the world. But President of the United States is also one of the most visible targets in the world. To date, of the 45 presidents, 4 of them have been assassinated. 17 more either had attempted assassinations or plots that were foiled by the Secret Service. So you can see that's 21 of the 45 that have basically been in harm's way. Not really very good numbers. In fact, the last president we had that was not assassinated or the victim of an assassination attempt or a plot was LBJ. That goes back a long ways. So you can see you really give a lot when you give up your life to public service, especially when you rise to the level of president. But let's get right into it. We talked about the fact, once again, 45 presidents, 4 assassinated, 17 more had attempts. We asked you specifically which president has been victimized by 2 assassination attempts within one 30-day period. And actually that 30-day period happened to be within a specific calendar month. Lots of answers we had from that, but the specific answer and the correct answer was president number 38, Gerald Ford. Believe it or not, in the month of September in 1975, on September 5th and September 22nd, there were 2 assassination attempts, and he survived both unharmed. The first was, believe it or not, by a member of the Charles Manson family, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, September 5th, 1975. Her attempt to assassinate Gerald Ford was thwarted by the fact that the chamber, as she fired, didn't have a bullet in it. She was firing on an empty chamber, otherwise he was especially vulnerable. The second assassination attempt on September 22nd, Sarah Jane Moore, simply a political radical. And she reached out in an attempt to try to assassinate President Gerald Ford. So there you have it. Question number 1, Gerald Ford, president number 38. Our second question, we talked a little bit about presidential trivia again. We talked about an attempt on Abraham Lincoln's life known as the Baltimore plot. And we talked about the fact that it was thwarted by a brand new innovation that really only was one in existence at the time in America, and that was a detective agency. Specifically, Alan Pinkerton and his crew of detectives were what saved Abraham Lincoln from a plot to assassinate him before he was ever even sworn in as the 16th president. The assassination attempt was supposed to take place in Baltimore, hence the name the Baltimore plot, and through Pinkerton's intercession, Abraham Lincoln's train never even stopped in Baltimore. It went direct on to Washington, D.C. Obviously, he survived the plot and became the 16th president. We all know, however, he went on to become the first president who actually was assassinated. Another tragedy for our country. We asked you, however, what was it that the Pinkerton Detective Agency created which has become symbolic of the detective industry ever since that day? You will remember, or maybe I didn't show it to you, but his motto, which I believe I did share with you, was, "We never sleep." And back in those days, he had a specific graphic that he used to describe the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. Again, you can see on there his motto was, "We never sleep." The middle of it, though, to express the fact that they never sleep, was an I. That led to his detectives becoming known as private eyes. Private eyes have become synonymous with the detective agency ever since that day. And that was the answer to what did the Pinkerton Detective Agency lend to the detective industry that has survived to this day and has become what they're known by, private eyes. The third question we had for you went back to a little bit of old trivia that we like to do here. The flag of a nation. What flag was this the nation of? I held it up for a little while last week, gave you all a very good chance to get a good look at it. This is, in fact, the flag of Dominica. Not the Dominican Republic, but the flag of Dominica. There are two very notable things about the flag that our players responded to when they identified this as the flag of Dominica. First of all, you see the parrot in the middle. Second of all, the parrot's color is purple. The parrot depicted on the flag is, in fact, the imperial Amazon parrot, which is only found on the island of Dominica, and that is why it is their national bird. So it's on the flag. That's how a lot of people were able to identify it. I did have one respondent identify the flag correctly, however, because of the purple color on the parrot. The respondent, the player, claims that it's the only flag in the world that has purple on it. I haven't looked up to see whether that's true or not, but I certainly have no reason to doubt it. So there you have it. For whatever reason, the person who said that purple was the defining color guessed correctly that it was Dominica. We also had several people guess because of the parrot on it. They were able to identify it from that. So, who were our winners this past week? We had several winners. This time, again, we had 3 winners. The tiebreaker, again, that we used was identified correctly by these 3 players as well. The bumper music was Bach's Cello Suite No. 1. In fact, if you just go to YouTube and you say play cello solos. This is the #1 video that comes up. It is world renowned as the foremost cello suite. Bach's Cello Suite #1. Ironically, also, no one identified this, and I didn't ask anybody to do so. But the particular selection that my producer, Scott McFerrin, chose for us was actually recorded by the incomparable Yo-Yo Ma. So I hope that you all enjoyed that. Bach's Cello Suite #1. Again, 3 winners actually correctly identified the bumper music as well. Kelvin Schrader, Alex and Barbara Hill, and Teresa Sundberg. As a result of that, all 3 people correctly guessing the bumper music and answering all 3 questions correctly, we had to have a random drawing. And as a result of that, even though we actually have 3 winners this week, the recipient of our bottle of wine goes to Alex and Barbara Hill. Congratulations to Alex and Barbara, but congratulations to Kelvin, to Teresa, and to Alex and Barbara for getting all of them right. None of them were easy questions, so my hat's off to you. Let's move on, shall we? This week's questions. We're going to begin with a little bit of trivia. Just sit right back and you hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship. Yeah, we're going to ask you a couple questions about Gilligan's Island. Gilligan's Island appeared from September 26, 1964 until September 17, 1967. 3 years. It starred, of course, and they're identified in the song as Gilligan, the skipper to the millionaire and his wife. But the stars were actually Bob Denver, Alan Hale Jr., Jim Backus, Natalie Schaefer, Russell Johnson, Tina Louise, and of course, Dawn Wells. A lot of people don't remember, but in season 1, 1964, the programs were actually aired in black and white. Seasons 2 and 3, they were aired in color. Color was a brand new innovation in television at that time, and all the shows weren't actually done. In fact, the very first show that my family routinely watched was a Sunday night show, Bonanza. We loved that show, and part of the reason we loved it was that it was in color. A lot of interesting trivia about Gilligan's Island. One of the interesting things about Gilligan's Island is that the pilot was filmed in Hawaii. And as the song says, they departed from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship. And there's this vision of a ship sailing out of a harbor, a motor launch. If you look closely, you will notice that the flag in the distance is at half-staff. The reason for that is that the pilot was filmed, even though it aired on September 26, 1964, it was filmed in November 1963. The flag was at half-staff because of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. So next time you're looking close to watching Gilligan's Island, it's on the right-hand side as they're leaving the harbor. The flag is at half-staff, and it was to commemorate John F. Kennedy. Ironically, another interesting tidbit about Gilligan's Island, it was aired on CBS. Typically, television shows stop airing because they no longer have a large enough audience to attract marketers who want to demonstrate their wares. You know, soaps and detergents and, you know, whatever all. That's not the case with Gilligan's Island. From 1964 to 1967, Gilligan's Island was a huge hit. Well, why in the world did they cancel it then? Well, ironically, it aired on CBS. There was another hit show on CBS at that time as well, and CBS was having a difficult time finding a time slot for it. Gunsmoke. Gilligan's Island was canceled to make room for Gunsmoke. The story I've heard told many times, whether it's true or not, I don't know, is that the president of CBS's wife was a fan of Gunsmoke. And she convinced her husband that rather than trying to juggle the lineup too much, the easiest thing to do was just cancel Gilligan's Island and continue Gunsmoke. Well, you all know Gunsmoke went on for 20 years and it had its own built-in audience. But Gilligan's Island was done. Most times for a TV show to end up in reruns, you have to have at least 200 episodes. Gilligan's Island only really had about 75 episodes. How did it end up in reruns that continue to this day? Well, there's over 1,000 television stations that you can see right here in the Milwaukee area alone. With the propensity for viewing old programs, there's a life even for a show that only had 75 airings. So Gilligan's Island lives on in reruns to this day. Now today's trivia for Gilligan's Island. We all know the 7 passengers, the skipper with Gilligan, the skipper too, the passengers. They set sail on the SS Minnow. How did the SS Minnow get its name? That's a very well-known type of trivia for Hollywood. How did the SS Minnow get its name? That's question number 1. Question number 2. We're going to go into a new topic again. A little bit about sports trivia. I think a lot of you know that professional teams, whether it's hockey or baseball or football or basketball, they spend a lot of money on marketing. They're constantly out there trying to create audiences for their games and their teams. As a result of that, a lot of them end up with logos that have deep significance for the teams. If you look closely at the logo for the Atlanta Falcons, the falcon that appears as the logo actually makes a letter F for the Falcons. If you look at the logo for the Washington Capitals, there's a hidden vision of the United States Capitol right in their logo. For the Big Ten, if you look closely, next time you're looking at Big Ten, you will see the number 10 hidden in the logo. It's not actually hidden that well. If you look at the Capitals or the Big Ten, a lot of times it's in the negative space around the logo. Look closely next time. You'll see that in the Big Ten. The Dallas Mavericks, you'll find a hidden M in the head of the Mustang. The Hartford Whalers, you'll find a hidden H and W for the Hartford Whalers. Once again, look in the negative space. I think you all know the wonderful story about the Milwaukee Brewers logo over time. You know the M and the B that make a baseball mitt. Interestingly enough, that logo for the Milwaukee Brewers was introduced in 1978. The Brewers did not spend mega dollars creating that logo. What they did was they announced a contest of their fans to see who could design a new logo for them. If you remember, prior to that, their logo was the beer barrel man swinging a baseball bat, and ultimately they came up with a new logo. They had over 2,000 entries. A man by the name of Tom Mindell, who was an art history student from the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, actually created it, and it became the new Brewers logo. The Brewers have had subsequent logos, the beer leaf M and variations of that. Within the last year or two, they've gone back to the MB logo, which makes a baseball mitt. Another interesting bit of trivia has nothing to do with baseball trivia, but University of Wisconsin Eau Claire, in addition to having a nice history now with the Milwaukee Brewers, has a wonderful history with East Castle Place. I wonder how many of you knew that Tyler Gudex and Lindsay, Laura Wengler, they're all graduates of University of Wisconsin Eau Claire. They're all Blue Golds. I myself went to UWEC for a year before I transferred down here to UWM. So that's another little bit of trivia for you. I have another logo for you to take a look at. The Minnesota Twins. Minnesota Twins have a hidden message in their logo as well. Take a good look at it. That's question number 2. What is the significance of the Minnesota Twins logo that's hidden within it? Question number 2. Question number 3. Going to go a little bit onto a brand new topic once again. Going to talk a little bit about elevators. Elevators have a longer history than you might know. They go back actually to 236 BC. Archimedes created a very primitive elevator. The Roman Colosseum used elevators. If you remember the floor of the Colosseum, which doesn't exist anymore, and conveniently what it does is it exposes the catacombs underneath. That's where they used to store the animals that they would raise up to the floor, and the gladiators, and they'd come up on these rope-drawn elevators to come up to the floor of the Colosseum to entertain the people in the stands with their bouts. The actual first really functional elevator came around in 1852. Elisha Grave Otis, a name that's very familiar with elevators today, Otis elevators. Elisha Graves Otis invented a safety brake. That safety brake revolutionized the vertical transport industry. And within 50 years after that, elevators were revolutionizing the industry of architecture as well. Ultimately, it led to the creation of the skyscraper. Now, technically, for something to be called a skyscraper, it has to be over 40 stories tall. It has to be over 150 meters tall, or 492 feet. Anything shorter than that, technically it's not a skyscraper. Taller than that, it is. I'm sorry, smaller than 40 stories is not. Taller than 40 stories, technically it's a skyscraper. Now, of course, you know, we're getting up into the 100 stories, 110 stories, 120 stories. It's because of the infrastructure now that's made of steel. And in fact, famous story, the Empire State Building, which for about 50 years was in fact the tallest building in the world, had a steel infrastructure. It was built from 1930 to 1931. It is 102 stories tall. Frankly, in addition to becoming an office building in downtown New York, and to create significance to the Empire State, to try to make it a commercial hub for the world to be able to recognize. It also was an opportunity to try to create jobs. 1930-31 was the beginning of the Great Depression, and people were looking for things to keep men at work. In fact, people were so desperate for work back in 1930 and 31 that they had no trouble filling the work roles to build the Empire State Building. In fact, construction went so fast, so smooth, and so efficiently that the Empire State Building was built at the rate of 1 story per week. The steel that went into building the Empire State Building came from the Pennsylvania steel mills. The story I've heard told many times is that the building was being erected so fast that they had to have this steel shipped so fast from Pennsylvania that sometimes they were putting it up in place in the Empire State Building and it was still warm. So, I mean, it was an amazing building. In fact, they built the Empire State Building and constructed it before they actually had filled it up completely. Over a third of the Empire State Building was vacant when it was completed, and it stayed that way for almost 10 years. But again, it was also to create jobs, it was to create an identity for the Big Apple. And of course, the Empire State Building got its name because New York is known as the Empire State. However, going back a little bit in time, now that you know that starting in 1930, 31, 32, like that, 100 stories was the tallest building in the world. Much of that made possible because of the invention of elevators. However, back in 1895 to 1899, buildings weren't really that big. And as a result of that, what is commonly known as the tallest building in the world wasn't nearly as tall as the Empire State Building. It's a building that you're all very familiar with. Tallest building in the world from 1895 to 1899. What is it and where is it located? There you have it, folks. Those are our 3 questions for the day. Again, get me your answers by noon on Monday. I'll be dropping a bottle of wine off for the Hill family, the Hills, to commemorate their winning this past week. Maybe you'll be the winner this next week. Call me at 963-8425 or email me at embrever@eastcastleplace.com or get your answers into my mailbox behind the concierge. That's our show for this week on behalf of our president of ECTV, Channel 955. And of course, we have a brand new mascot, Ekti. I don't know if you've noticed that yet, but Ekti is the mascot for Channel 955. So on behalf of our president, Tyler Gudex, our executive producer, Laura Wengler, our producer, Scott McFerrin, our artistic director, Cooper Ledvina, and I must give special credit also to my producer and cameraman and the man who chooses the bumper music for my show, Scott McFerrin. You never get to see him. He's behind the camera. He's who makes it all work. There you have it, folks. That's our show for this week. I'll see you again next week, and until then, I'm Mike Brever. This is Quick Trivia with Mike. I ask you, please, be smart, be safe, and be patient. You all see East Castle Place is starting to open up a little bit, but be patient and be safe. I'll see you all next week. Until then, have a great week.